The Department of Labor has released the latest job numbers for the week ending October 17th. The report reveals new insight into the economic rebound amid the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Last week, 787,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits. That is down 55,000 claims from the previous week and is the lowest number of first-time unemployment claims we have seen since the start of the pandemic in March. Now, 12 days away from the election, there are growing questions about what this could mean for the nation's economic recovery looking forward. For more on this, I want to bring in Mark Hamrick. He is the Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate. Mark, welcome. So this is the lowest number of first-time unemployment claims since the pandemic began back in March. To what can we attribute these numbers?
Well, I think the economy is continuing a recovery that may have lost some momentum recently. This is a process that has been continuing really since the downturn began. We're now 31 weeks into the pandemic-related downturn, and we've seen these jobless claims coming in at a lower level for some time now. But we're also having an ongoing level of job loss. So even as employers do bring some people back, we have people who are losing their jobs. You're seeing slides of retail there. That obviously is one sector that is continuing to hemorrhage. But, consumers have ramped back up with respect to their spending for goods. It's spending for services that really now needs to make up lost ground, and the outlook isn't necessarily very strong for that until we get past the real part of this pandemic.
And of course, we are less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, Mark. The president has touted his economic prowess as a pillar of his campaign. How might these latest jobs numbers impact voters' decisions ahead of November 3rd?
I don't know that, let's say, unlike Bill Clinton's campaign, where they invoke the notion of it's the economy, stupid, meaning that's obviously the most important issue. I don't know that it is the key issue this time around, as Bankrate has surveyed Americans with respect to their concerns about their own personal finances. The pandemic is ranking right up there, along with their concern about the outcome for the election. Those who are concerned about the election outcome tend to be wealthier. I think there's probably the concern that the president is trying to basically place at the feet of Joe Biden, that their taxes will go up. But of course, for those who have either been separated for the workforce or have seen a decline in their income, that concern is real and it's present. And the majority of those who, by the way, have cited concern say they've cut back on their spending. So I guess ultimately the question we won't answer until we know what the outcome of the election is how many people have not yet made up their minds and how many people will be swayed by the continued flow of this economic data.
And of course, Mark, despite this somewhat hopeful news, there are still more than 23 million Americans filing for some form of unemployment benefit. What does this tell you about the recovery? Also keeping in mind that we're seeing more Americans exhausting their eligibility for unemployment aid. How will that impact the jobless numbers moving forward?
Well, that number you cited, the number of Americans who are continuing to receive some form of aid, reminds us that we are experiencing a historic economic downturn, which is continuing, not only in its magnitude, but in its continuation. Remember that we lost 22 million jobs at the outset. We've recovered about half of those. And we know there was a big snapback in the third quarter. Another question yet to be answered is how the economy will fare here in the current final quarter of the year. The expectation is we do get some growth, but the job market may not be back to pre-pandemic levels with respect to the unemployment rate until 2023. At least that's what the Federal Reserve believes.
And the Trump administration is still at odds with Congress over the next coronavirus relief package. There's a lot of back and forth still going on Capitol Hill. How big of an issue do you think this is for the average American voter?
I think it's obviously a situation where all the parties, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, and the White House, have essentially dug in their heels. And I think the most important dynamic right now in terms of determining an outcome really is the approach of the election. I think people who are in these elected positions want to continue to cling to their talking points. For Americans overall, obviously, the strength of the economy is paramount with respect to whether they're currently employed or whether they're unemployed and how quickly they get back to work. The fact that there is not economic stimulus legislation agreed to at this point exacts a toll on those who have suffered loss, but it also takes a toll on the broader economy, which otherwise would recover more quickly.
All right. Well, Mark Hamrick, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insight.
Thank you.